So I think we can start. So for the CDA radio first lecture, these are your prelim topics. So it will include the introduction to calvarium, head or brain imaging modalities, the craniofacial trauma, which are your head injury, orbital injury, and facial trauma, and also your sinus nasal imaging. Okay, so let's start with the introduction to brain imaging. So welcome to CDA radio of the Department of Radiology. So what are the common clinical syndromes that you will encounter as a clinician when you are um, having your duty na at the ER? So you will encounter acute trauma, stroke, seizure, infection and cancer, headache, coma, and dementia. So these are your common clinical syndromes that you will encounter. So what are the current neuroimaging options that you can request? So you have skull X-ray. So in skull X-ray, the two common are your AP view and lateral view. So these are the common views that you will request as a clinician. But there are also special views. The Caldwell's view, Waters view, Towns view, and Segmental vertex view. So these views are for the better visualization of your sinuses. Your Caldwell's view, it is for your frontal sinus, suited for your frontal sinus. Then your Waters view is for your maxillary sinus. The Towns view for your better evaluation of the posterior fossa and assess fracture of the skull. And then your segmental vertex view, this one is your sphenoid sinuses naman. For a while. So this is an example of your skull X-ray, AP and lateral view. So these are the two most common views that you will request if you want to rule out fracture in cases of trauma. So we have in this axial view, in this AP view of the X-ray, there is the paired parietal bones for much of the side or the roof of the skull vault and are joined by your midline, your sagittal suture in here. Then your frontal bone in here, this forms the most of the front of the skull vault. And then the frontal bones, it joins with the parietal bone via your coronal suture in here. And your bregma, this is the junction of your coronal and sagittal suture. So that's your bregma in here. And when we go to our lateral view, so the occipital bone here, so you will appreciate the occipital bone in your lateral view. This forms the back of the skull vault and it is joined by your parietal here via your lambdoid suture. And then the lambdoid, the junction of your lambdoid and your sagittal is your lambda. And then here, your temporal bone, temporal area, the greater wing of the sphenoid and the squamous part of the temporal bone, it forms the side of the skull below the frontal and the parietal bones. So your Caldwell view. So this Caldwell view, also called your occipitofrontal view, it is ideally suited for studying or evaluating your frontal sinuses. So it is in here, so to get a Caldwell view, so the patient is made to sit or stand in front of the film with the radiographic baseline tilted to an angle of 15 to 20 degrees. Okay, so the frontal sinuses here is in direct contact with the bulky or grid. So there is no chance of distortion or blurring. Okay, so this is your Caldwell view. Okay, the incident beam here is horizontal and centered half-inch below the level of the occipital protuberance here. So this is your frontal sinus view or your Caldwell view. So in here, so this is the area of the bulky. Andito yung ating film and this is the area of the X-ray tube. Okay, so next is the Towns view. So the Towns view, it allows a better evaluation of the posterior fossa region and assess the fracture of the skull. So in here, the patient is also asked to position in erect position, standing or sitting. The patient is positioned so that their back and posterior skull are touching the back grid. And then the patient, the patient chin will be bring down until the radiographic baseline of the orbitomyata line, so that's your orbitomyata line, is parallel to the floor, therefore perpendicular to the body. So that's your proper positioning for your Townes view. Okay, so in here, as you can see, this is the posterior area of posterior fossa of the skull. And then as you can see here also, this is your foramen magnum here, inferior. Okay, so this area of the parietal bone, and this is the area of the occipital or the posterior region of the skull vault. The next is the Waters view or your occipitomental view. So in here, there is hyperextension. There is angulation of 45 degrees from the orbitomyata line. The rays pass from behind the head and are perpendicular to the radiographic plate or your Bucky in here. It is commonly used to get a better view of your maxillary sinuses. So the Waters view is for the maxillary sinuses. So this is the back grid, and from here yung ating tube or yung ating X-ray. So it will pass from behind the head. Okay, perpendicular to the Bucky grid or the plate. So this one, as you can see, you can better see the maxillary sinuses in here. But you will also see the frontal. Okay, but this Waters view is for your maxillary sinuses. So basically, technically, you have to, basically, there is just a lucency in here because normally it will just contain air. Okay, so it will appear lucent in X-ray. But if in cases there's a pacification or air fluid leveling in that area of the frontal or maxillary sinuses, so you can say or you can diagnose that the patient has sinusitis or inflamed sinuses. The next is the submentovertical view. For this one, the neck is maximally extended, as you can see in this example, and the film cassette touches the top of the head. So there is maximal neck extension for the visualization of the sphenoid sinuses, direct visualization of the base of the skull and their zygomatic bone. So here, the X-ray beam enters the head under the chin, near the mental tubercle here of the mandible, and it will exit the vertex here. So the direction of the beam is also perpendicular to the cantomeatal line. This view is used for the visualization, again, of your base of the skull. So here is the base of the skull. That's the base of the skull. And also for the evaluation of your zygomatic bone in cases of trauma, if you want to rule out fracture in the area of zygomatic bone, or if you want to better visualize the fracture in the zygomatic bone. So your request for a submentovertical view. So what are the other current neuroimaging options? So you have your CT scan to view in axial, sagittal, and coronal, as well as your MRI. And sometimes ultrasound and angiogram, CT or MRI. So CT scan versus MRI, so they have the different appearance. So this is an example of a CT scan in axial view and MRI in sagittal view. So here in CT scan, we have what we call bone and brain window. So this one is an example of your bone window for you to assess fracture in the skull vault or calvarium. And this one is a brain window, okay, to assess intracranial hemorrhage secondary to trauma. Okay, so this is where you will see it, or you will appreciate subdural hemorrhage, epidural hemorrhage. So this in your brain window. Okay, but in cases of fractures of tissue swelling, you will appreciate it better in your bone window. And then MRI. So in MRI, we have lots of sequences. Okay, but the two most commonly used is T1 and T2. Okay, but we have PD, FLAIR, FLAIR sequence 1. So depending on what pathology you are looking at. Okay, so that's your MRI. Then for the ultrasound of the brain, this is an example of the ultrasound of the brain in coronal and in your sagittal view. So here's your ventricles, okay, containing CSF. That's why it is an echoic in ultrasound. So we also have CT angiogram or MRI angiography for us to evaluate the exact location of an aneurysm or sometimes ruptured aneurysm. In cases also of vascular anomaly, vascular malformation. So CT angiogram or MR angiography is requested. So this is an important table where you will see the preferred initial imaging study by clinical presentation of your patient. So it will help you a lot if you will be a clinician someday. So in cases of trauma, so the double X is the best study or the recommended study. So in cases of trauma, you can request for a plain CT scan. You don't need contrast, you don't need MRI. For in cases of trauma, you just want to evaluate if there is intraparenchymal hemorrhage, intracranial hemorrhage, or fracture in the skull vault. Plain CT is enough. Then in cases of stroke, so in stroke or cerebrovascular disease, we have two. It's either infarct or hemorrhage. So in cases of hemorrhage, if clinically or after assessing the patient, you see that it is more on bleed or hemorrhage. It is better that you will request CT scan plain, okay, if it's hemorrhage. But if it's infarct, if you think that the patient had infarct, you better request for an MRI than your CT scan. Because in MRI, infarct is can be easily seen in your diffusion-weighted MRI. So that's the ideal. Okay, so pag infarct, plain MRI. When bleed, CT scan. Depending on the status of the patient or case of the patient, depending in your history. Okay? So again, history is important. So seizure, plain CT with contrast, and plain MRI are acceptable study, but the recommended is your MRI with contrast because in seizure, usually ang hinahanap natin dito is mass that will cause the seizure. So if you're looking for a mass, so MRI with contrast is better than any other imaging. Okay, so MRI with contrast. And then infection, so the plain CT with contrast CT and plain MRI are acceptable, but the best choice is MRI with contrast because in cases of, for example, meningitis, there will be enhancement after contrast injection. There will be enhancement of the meninges, which is indicative of meningitis in your MRI. Okay, in cases of cancer, so cancer, we are talking about tumors. So it is better to request MRI with contrast. Okay, because it will also produce enhancement post-contrast. In cases of acute headache, it is better to request only plain CT scan. Okay, you don't need to request initially with contrast. But if in case there is after plain CT scan, there's a suspicious mass, now you can request for with contrast, CT with contrast for better evaluation. But initially, plain CT is enough. And then for chronic headache, so plain MRI. Okay? So that's different, acute and chronic. In chronic headache, plain MRI is recommended. And in cases of dementia, plain MRI also. And if ever there is uncertainties or you have suspicious lesion, you can request naman for with contrast MRI. And then for in cases of coma, plain CT scan is enough. Okay? And sometimes acceptable study also is your MR with contrast. Then next is the craniofacial trauma. So we have the head and facial trauma. So for head trauma, again, the initial first diagnostic procedure is your X-ray conventional radiography. So it is not, this is the first diagnostic procedure and it is not sensitive for the detection of your intracranial pathology. And absence of skull fracture in your X-ray does not exclude significant intracranial injury. So again, history is important. So if you physical examination, physical examination. If you think that the patient has intracranial pathology, so not be contented with your X-ray. Just request for CT scan for your safety and for the patient's safety also for better evaluation. Okay. If you have high suspicion of intracranial hemorrhage, you request for a CT scan. Okay? Then this one, CT scan, it is quickly and widely available. It is highly accurate in the detection of acute intra and extraaxial hemorrhage as well as skull, temporal bone, facial, and orbital fractures. These fractures, you will detect it in your CT scan. Intravenous contrast media is not used in the acute setting because it may mimic or mask underlying hemorrhage. Okay, so in our table, so in cases of acute, plain CT scan lang. We don't need contrast. It is performed in unconscious patients with severe hand injury. And then your MRI naman, this is less desirable than CT in acute setting. Okay, in acute setting, CT scan. It has long examination time and comparable to CT or superior to CT in the detection of acute epidural and subdural hematomas and non-hemorrhagic brain injury. It is more sensitive to brainstem injury and acute, subacute chronic hemorrhage, especially with FLAIR or fluid attenuated reinversion recovery and gradient recalled echo or your GRE. The T2 weighted and susceptibility weighted imaging would be helpful, and this is the modality of choice for patients with subacute and chronic head injury. It is recommended for patients with acute head trauma when neurologic findings are unexplained by your CT scan. Then next is the scalp injury. So in cases of scalp soft tissue swelling, it is the only reliable evidence for us to determine the site of impact. So if there is a soft tissue swelling in that area, so most probably that's the site of the impact. So that's our clue, or that will be our focus, because most probably that's where our fracture is. Okay, and then subgaleal hematoma, it is the most common manifestation. It is recognized on CT or MRI as focal soft tissue swelling of the scalp, localized beneath the subcutaneous fibrofatty tissue and above the temporalis muscle and the calvarium. So here's an example of your soft tissue swelling in the left frontal region. So most probably, kung maghahanap tayo ng fracture, kung magkakaroon ng fracture this area. Okay, because that's this is our evidence that this is the site of impaction. Okay, so another one, ultrasound showing intracranial hematoma in this area, and this is your subgaleal hematoma. And then this one is an MRI coronal view, where you will see a big subgaleal hematoma in this area. And the next are the linear fractures, are the skull fractures. So the skull fractures have three types: the linear, depressed, diastatic fracture. So the linear, it presents as sharp, dark, translucent line, irregular or jagged, branching character. It often extended to the base, but sometimes be careful to call for a linear fracture, because sometimes it is just a vascular groove. If it's a vascular groove, it is a smooth and curving course, and sometimes it can also be just a suture lines with serrated edges. Okay, so if you want to call for a linear fracture, make sure that it is a linear fracture talaga. Okay, and then depressed fracture, stellate with multiple fracture lines radiating outward from a central point, usually secondary to severe trauma. And then diastatic fracture is a linear fracture which extends into the suture and separates it. Okay, in diastatic, there is widening of the suture. It is common in infants and children, and the most common involved sutures are your lambdoid and sagittal sutures. So this is an example of your linear skull fracture. So usually it extends to the base, okay? Sharp, dark, sometimes irregular or branching in character, and extends into the base of the skull. But be careful again, because sometimes it can be just a suture variant, normal variant of suture, and sometimes it is just a vascular groove. But this is a real linear skull fracture. So in 3D CT scan reconstruction, so this is how you see or view it. Okay, so there's a linear fracture. Then next is the depressed skull fracture. So this is how it looks like. So depressed fracture in the vertex and the vertex of the skull. So it is stellate multiple fracture lines radiating outward from a central point secondary to your severe trauma. So example of your depressed fracture in your CT scan. So here's the soft tissue swelling. So this is the site of impact. Okay, so this is your depressed fracture in the right front. And then upon 3D reconstruction, this is the area of your depressed skull fracture. Another example, so in here, so as you can see, we have our bone window. This is the bone window and the brain window. So this is both axial CT scan. So as you can see, this first image, it demonstrates a right parietal depressed fracture with overlying soft tissue swelling in here. Okay, the fracture is well seen when there is a wide window to enhance the contrast between the bone and the soft tissue. So, okay, in the bone window, we can appreciate the fracture. But in this area, brain window, we have difficulty detecting the fracture here because we have a narrower window to demonstrate the difference between the gray and white matter. Okay, in between this area of the bone. It fails to show the fracture in this window. Okay, so that's the difference. That's the importance of your bone window and brain window. Then the static skull fracture. So these are linear fractures which extends into the suture and separates it, or it produce widening, common in infant and children, and lambdoid and sagittal sutures are the most commonly involved sutures. So this is an example of your CT scan, diastatic skull fracture and the lambdoid suture and your sagittal suture. Okay, so there's widening of the suture. Then next are your temporal bone fractures. So temporal bone fractures are seen in thin section, high resolution CT scanning, which improves the ability to detect and characterize fractures. So the patient will present with, if temporal bone fracture is present, the patient will present with deafness, facial nerve paralysis, vertigo, dizziness, or nystagmus. And the physical signs of the patient will be hemotympanum, CSF autourea, ecchymosis over the mastoid process, or what we call the battle sign. And in CT scan, we will see opacification of the mastoid ear cells, fluid in the middle ear cavity, and the pneumocephalus. Okay, so these are your CT findings in cases of temporal bone fracture. So there's opacification of the mastoid ear cells because of hemorrhage, syempre because you have temporal bone fracture, and also fluid in the middle ear cavity because also of hemorrhage. And pneumocephalus, so this one, air siya sa area ng brain because of fracture also. So what we have three types of temporal bone fractures. We have the longitudinal temporal bone fracture, the transverse temporal bone fracture, and mixed and oblique fracture types. So first is the longitudinal temporal bone fracture. So it is 70 to 90%. It results from a blow to the side of the head. And the complications in your longitudinal temporal bone fractures are conductive hearing loss, dislocation of fracture of the ossicles, and CSF otorhinuria. So this is an example of your longitudinal temporal bone fractures, which results from a blow to the side of the head. So that's your longitudinal temporal bone fracture. So in here, this is how your longitudinal bone fracture happens. So example, so axial CT scan. So there is a left longitudinal bone fracture in here sa area ng ating mastoid or sa area ng ating petrous bone. Also here, there's a longitudinal fracture here in the right. So that's your longitudinal temporal bone fracture. So in here, in your coronal view, there's a longitudinal fracture in here in the right. Then your transverse temporal bone fracture, this one naman results from blow to the occiput or frontal region. Okay? It produces more severe complications such as sensorineural hearing loss, severe vertigo, nystagmus, and perilymphatic fistula. Facial palsy is seen in 30 to 50%, and it may involve the carotid canal or the jugular foramen, causing injury to the carotid artery or jugular vein. So this is how your transverse temporal bone fracture looks like. And this one also. So here, axial CT scan. So kung yung longitudinal natin is ganit yung orientation na this one is your transverse fracture. So it is perpendicular to the axis of the temporal bone. Okay, so this is to the long axis of the petrous bone or your temporal bone. So this is your transverse fracture. And then the mixed and oblique fracture types in here, otic capsule sparing fractures, it run anterolateral to the otic capsule and are usually caused by direct blows to the temporoparietal region. Okay, we have here otic violating fractures, which are your cochlea and semicircular canals are damaged and results from direct impact to your occipital region. So in here, 2 to 5 times, It will develop their facial nerve injury. 48 times, there will be CSF leak. And 7 to 25 times, there will be hearing loss and sustained intracranial injuries such as your epidural hematoma and your subarachnoid hemorrhage. So this is an example of your mix. So we have an oblique fracture here. So this is a sagittal view, no, of your CT scan. So meron tayong oblique fracture. We also have the transverse fracture and your longitudinal fracture. Sorry, this is also pala your axial. Naka-zoom lang siya. So longitudinal fracture, transverse fracture, and oblique fracture. So mix and oblique fracture of the temporal bone. So this is complex. Okay, so madaming complications yan. So next are your head injury. So you have classifications, the primary lesions and secondary lesions. So yung primary lesions natin, we have extraaxial and intraaxial. And the secondary lesion. Yung ating primary lesions, they occur as a direct insult of a blow to the head. They are your immediate injuries. Can either be extraaxial or intraaxial. While your secondary lesions, it is an indirect result of the injury. It may occur hours or even days after the trauma. Okay, so yung primary lesion natin, again, it occurs as a direct result of a blow to the head. It can be an epidural, subdural, subarachnoid, intraventricular hemorrhage, as well as DAI or your diffuse axonal injury, cortical contusions, intracerebral hematomas, and subcortical gray matter injury. So that's your primary lesions. On the other hand, your secondary lesions, these are your cerebral swelling. These are the complications of your primary. Brain herniation, hydrocephalus, ischemia or infarction, CSF leak, leptomeningeal cyst, and even encephalomalacia. So here is the difference of your epidural versus subdural hematoma. So sa location tayo. So pointed here are the anatomy. So the skin in here, the bone. Next is the epidural space, then the dura, then the subdural space in here, the arachnoid, the subarachnoid space, and then the pia mater. Okay, so this is the anatomy. Okay, so as you can see, sa epidural space, that's where your epidural hematoma happens, and then sa subdural space, that's where your subdural hematoma happens. So your epidural hematoma, it is usually arterial in origin, usually your middle meningeal artery. And most are temporal or temporoparietal area or region. And then in CT scan, it is well-defined high attenuation, lenticular or biconvex extraaxial collections. There will be mass effect with sulcal effacement and midline shift. There is sometimes overlying skull fracture, but it may also occur from stretching and tearing of meningeal arteries without the associated fractures. It does not cross sutures, but it can cross faults. So as you can see, here is the faults. Okay, it can cross the faults, but it does not cross the suture line. Okay, so that's your epidural hematoma. An example of your epidural hematoma in your axial CT scan right frontal region. So this is the hyperdense extraaxial collection in the right frontal with biconvex shape showing you an epidural hematoma. High attenuation extraaxial collection. Lenticular or biconvex, there's mass effect in the right frontal lobe. As you can see, parang there is edema na in this area. Okay, there's a mass effect pushing this area to the contralateral side. Okay, so there is midline shift. Okay, wala na siya sa midline or sa normal. That's your subfalcine herniation. And it does not extend beyond the right coronal suture. Okay, so that's your CT scan finding of epidural hematoma. Then the next is the subdural hematoma. Typically, this is venous in origin. In contrast to your epidural, which is arterial. In here, there is a stretching and tearing of cortical veins in the subdural space, and it is also due to disruption of penetrating branches of the superficial cerebral arteries. This one extends over a much larger space than your epidural hematoma because the inner dural layer and arachnoid are not firmly attached as the dura and inner table of the skull. So, mas localized yung ating epidural. It is commonly seen after acute deceleration injury from a motor vehicle accident or even fall. So this is an example of your subdural hematoma. So the shape, crescenteric shape. Extraaxial din siya, katulad ng ating epidural. It does not cross the falx. So here's the falx. So it does not cross the falx, but it does cross the sutural margins. So that's their difference. So this is an example of acute subdural hematoma in the left parietal lobe in your CT scan eagle view. So here you can see a crescent shape, high attenuation, does not cross the falx. So here's the falx. It does not cross the falx and tentorium cerebelli, but it can cross your sutural margin. So as you can see, almost the left cerebral convexity ay merong hematoma. So this is an example of your subdural hematoma in the right temporal. There is high attenuation, crescent shape, extra eggshell collection in the right temporal. Then this one is a chronic subdural. This is how your chronic hematoma looks like in your CT scan. It becomes darker because your acute fresh blood, high attenuation. In chronic, it has low attenuation value, similar to CSF. But it also has crescent shape, and also it has mass effect with midline shift. Because the midline, there is mass effect or pushing to the contralateral side. So this is your chronic subdural hematoma in your CT scan. So this one naman is a rebleeding subdural hematoma where you can see heterogeneous appearance from a mixture of your fresh blood and partially liquefied hematoma. So in here, the upper layer, so in the left cerebral convexity, the upper layer has low attenuation. This is your old blood. And this lower layer has high attenuation, and this is your fresh blood. So this is what we call your sediment level or hematocrit level that we can see in our rebleeding subdural hematoma. Okay, so ibig sabihin, meron na siyang chronic before but nag-rebleed. So nagkaroon ng fresh blood. Okay, and it resulted to sediment level or hematocrit level. So note also of the mass effect. So there is compression to the contralateral side. So this one, so practice. So what is the diagnosis? Is it acute or chronic? First, there's a subdural hematoma in the left parietal. Subdural because it is crescent shape, high attenuation, extending along the entire left hemisphere. So this is your acute subdural hematoma. And then also we have the epidural hematoma. It is a lenticular or biconvex in shape, extra eggshell collection with overlying scalp soft tissue swelling, and it has high attenuation. So this is also acute. Okay, so both are acute. And then we also have the what we call subarachnoid hemorrhage. So subarachnoid hemorrhage naman, it is due to the disruption of small subarachnoid vessels or direct extension into the subarachnoid space by contusion or hematoma. So it may be due to trauma or ruptured aneurysm. So if it's not due to trauma, if the patient has no trauma, so most probably there's a ruptured aneurysm. Okay, especially in those hypertensive patients. So this is an example of your subarachnoid hemorrhage. So as you can see, there are linear areas of high attenuation within the cisterns and sulci. Okay, so this one in the right parietal sulci, and this one is in the right sylvian fissure. So this is an evidence of your subarachnoid hemorrhage. In MRI, it appears isointense to T1 and T2. And in FLAIR, which is more sensitive in detecting acute subarachnoid hemorrhage, it presents with high signal intensity like this one. So parang nilaline niya there is yung sulci, so that's nilaline, natidelineate nung blood or nung hemorrhage yung sulci. So if due to ruptured aneurysm, so again, in cases, if it's secondary to trauma, so maybe there is a fracture or fracture in that area of that subarachnoid hemorrhage or any part of the skull. But if it's not secondary to trauma, it may be ruptured aneurysm. Okay, so if that's the case, so CT angiography should be done to localize where's the area of the ruptured aneurysm. Then next is the DAI or the diffuse axonal injury. So in here, there is widespread disruption of axons at the time of an acceleration or deceleration injury due to high-speed motor vehicle crashes. So this is usually not seen on imaging but better seen on MRI than CT scan. So in here, there's loss of consciousness, which starts immediately after injury and it is more severe than patients with your cortical contusions or hematoma. So this is more severe. So in case of diffuse axonal injury, this is a axial CT scan of patient with diffuse axonal injury. Sometimes there's subtle or absent findings, but the most common are small petechial hemorrhages and small petechial hemorrhages at the gray-white matter junction or corpus callosum. There are also ill-defined areas of decreased attenuation. So, merong surrounding decreased attenuation. So, that's your edema. Okay, so this is your hemorrhagic diffuse axonal injury. And in MRI, so there are also small foci of increased signal within the white matter, sometimes multiple as many as 15 to 20 lesions in severe head injury. Okay, so this is your hemorrhagic diffuse axonal injury in your MRI. In the right frontal parasagittal white matter. Then your cortical contusion. So there are areas of focal brain injury primarily involving the superficial gray matter. They're less likely to have loss of consciousness unlike your DAI and with better prognosis than in patients with DAI. Okay, so pag contusion, better prognosis. So this one, there's a right frontal and left parietal soft tissue swelling. So cortical contusion, it is well seen on CT scan. Tends to be multiple and bilateral, and it occurs near bony protuberance like this one. So the common sites are your temporal lobes, which is above the petrous bone or posterior to the greater sphenoid wing, and also in the frontal lobes, which is above the cribriform plate, planum sphenoidale and the lesser sphenoid wing. And it can also occur at the margins of depressed skull fractures. Okay, so that's the site of your cortical contusion. And then hemorrhagic lesion, there is foci of high attenuation within superficial gray matter, which may be surrounded by larger area of low attenuation. So yung area ng low attenuation that nagsusurround dun sa hyperdensity, that's your edema. Okay, so in MRI, there's a poorly marginated areas of increased signal on T2 in the characteristic location. Okay, so in here, there are multiple peripheral areas of increased signal intensity, which are your cortical contusion in your superior frontal, inferior frontal, and anterior temporal lobes. So what are your CT scan findings? So this one, there is a hemorrhagic cortical contusion in the bilateral inferior frontal and anterior temporal gray matter. So bilateral yung contusion yan. And then we have intraventricular hemorrhage. So as you can see in here, there is hyperdensity in the area of the posterior horn of both lateral ventricles, which represents your blood or hemorrhage. So there is intraventricular extension of the hemorrhage. And then you also have the presence of subarachnoid hemorrhage in the bilateral temporal. So as you can see, there are hyperdensities in between sulci. So that's your subarachnoid hemorrhage in the bilateral temporal lobe. So I think this is my last slide for this lecture. Do you have any questions?
None po daw.
Okay, so I hope you understand something in this lecture. So if none, or if you have any question, you can approach naman your co-or.